not just the custodians of the house of one God, but they were the custodians of the house which had in it 360 gods. And these gods were sought by the Arabs for rain, for power, for children, for material possessions, for peace, for war, for strength. So there was a God for everything. And they would go and ask these gods, make their prayers to them. They would sacrifice animals to please these gods. They would make pilgrimage every year to these idols in Mecca. So all the practices which were meant to be for that one God, now they were being used to satisfy these 360 idols or more. And there are some funny stories related to that time. One of the companions of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, his name is Omar, and we're going to talk about Omar later, a very important figure. Omar, he said that when I was an idol worshipping person before Islam, before he became a Muslim, he said that I was a very poor man and I could not afford to buy an idol or to make an idol for myself. And everyone around me had an idol. So I had the desire that I need to have my own God too. So he said I had a few dates and I gathered these dates and made an idol out of these dates. So he has his own personal God in his pocket made out of dates. Could you imagine that? And he said I was traveling one time with this God in my pocket made out of dates and I had nothing to eat. And, I could not get anything to eat, so I became really hungry and I ended up eating my own God, the one which I made out of dates, because at least that would satisfy my hunger. And so he was expressing his sadness or his grief in the later times over what kind of a person he was. This was how the Arabs were. They were simple people, but at the same time, they were people with little intelligence when it came to religion or when it came to God. They were easily fooled by Satan into making their gods, creating their gods, and at times eating their own gods as well. So the primary religion of Arabia was idol worship or worshipping these different forms or different deities. The Arabs were a polytheistic people in the year 570 CE. But that does not mean that they did not worship or they did not believe in Allah. They still believe that there is this one supreme God and He is Allah. He is the creator of everything else. But what they said was that these idols are a connection or intermediaries between themselves and Allah. So yes, Allah is the supreme God and we need to pray to Him, but what we need to do is that we need to worship these idols who then in turn, if they're happy with us, are going to take our messages to this one God. And that is the only way to access this one God, which of course is totally rubbish when it comes to the Islamic understanding or the understanding of the great prophets of Islam. And that is because Allah has a direct relationship with everyone in Islam. You don't need an idol. You don't need an intermediary. You don't need an angel or a human being or a spirit to take your messages to God or to Allah. Allah can listen to what we're saying. Allah is there. We can worship Him directly. We don't need anyone between Him and ourselves. But this was the understanding of the Arabs at the time when Islam actually dawned upon Arabia. Even though polytheism was the primary religion in Arabia, but that does not mean that the Arabs did not allow other religions. Actually, they were religiously quite diverse as people. There were some people in Mecca and in some of the other areas in Arabia who still worshipped one God only. They did not believe in the idols. They called themselves the Hanafis, the followers of Abraham. So they stuck to the monotheism which Abraham, peace be upon him, had brought to Arabia. Even though they did not know much about it, they had lost a lot of its teachings and understanding, but they were a people who just followed this simple path of worshipping one God without knowing much about this one God. So there were a few individuals like that. There were also Jewish tribes in Arabia, especially in the city of Yathrib, which we're going to talk about later. Um, and they had settled here for a long time. There were different theories of how they came into Arabia. Some said that they came when the Jews were thrown out of Babylon, when they had to be exiled from Babylon, when the Babylonians took over the Holy Land, Jerusalem, and destroyed their kingdom. Some of them migrated down south to Arabia. Some say that they had come from Yemen. So there are different theories. But also a very strong theory is that they had come into Yathrib because they had the prior knowledge that the final prophet is going to be arriving in Yathrib. They had in their scriptures the mention of this final messenger of God who they knew would come in Arabia, and they even knew the city, which was a city full of date palm trees. And we talked about Yathrib in our last episode. It was a city full of date palm trees. So they had settled in Yathrib, and they were quite strong in Yathrib. Financially, they would loan out, give different loans. They would even charge interest on water wells. So they were very strong when it came to Yathrib. They had a lot of influence in Yathrib. So there were a lot of Jewish tribes in Arabia. There were also Christian tribes down south in Arabia in a region called Najran, and they had also migrated in previous times. Most likely they had come down south from Yemen, because Yemen was a Christian land some time ago, and they had been part of the early Christian tradition, but they were different in their beliefs from the Roman or the Catholic Christian traditions, because they did not believe in Jesus being divine. Many of these tribes did not. Many did not believe that he was divine. They believed in him as a prophet of God, as a messenger, but not son of God, or not somebody who is holy or should be worshipped. There were also Zoroastrians, fire worshippers in Arabia. There were star worshippers in Arabia. And then there were people who worshipped spirits, and who worshipped, saints. So there were all kinds of religions in Arabia. So Arabia was religiously quite a diverse place. But the primary religion being the religion of idol worship, which Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, came to correct, to bring the people back to the monotheistic tradition of Abraham and Ishmael, and to establish the oneness of Allah, not only in Arabia but the rest of the world, and to purge the Kaaba, the house of God, from all these false deities, and establish the worship of one Creator in the house of God. So in this episode we talked about the political structure, the tribal structure of Arabia. We also talked about the most important tribe in Arabia, the Quraysh, and why they were important. And finally, we end with the discussion on the various religions of Arabia. Inshallah, God willing, in our next episode, we're going to talk about the position of women in pre-Islamic Arabia, as well as the Roman and the Persian empires, which is very significant in how Islam it changed things around for women. We'll also talk about slavery in pre-Islamic Arabia. And finally, we will end with the importance of the Arabic language to the Arabs, because that is significant in our discussion, especially when we're going to talk about the Holy Qur'an and why the Qur'an is such a miracle. We're going to explore why the Arabic language was such an important thing for the Arabs. With this, we're going to end with the fifth session of Islam Unplugged. I hope you are enjoying these sessions and you are gaining knowledge. I also hope that many of the misconceptions you had have been taken care of, have been quelled by this discussion. So with this, take care of yourself, be at peace with your Creator, and take care of your families, your neighborhoods, and I'll see you in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you.